I'm Brad Gollin.
And I'm Rob Welke.
And together, we're Mexit, maximizing the value of your exit. And today is a continuation in our series of discussions with experts and business professionals today we're going to be speaking to an old friend, John Higgins. And John's probably one of the most experienced acquisition people I've ever met. When we first met John, you'd done a number of them, but I was amazed because through your career, you really turned the whole acquiring a business into a science as opposed to an art. Because I look at, when we first met, how long it took you to kind of acquire a company and integrate it fully into your operations. And then to where, when you retired from that role where you were working with service, you had it down to a 90-day process, which I've never seen anybody do it with kind of the efficiency that you had. So I was really excited when you agreed to join us, and actually excited to have you involved in terms of the Mexit process and the book. So what I'd like to do first is, can I get you to kind of just introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a little bit of your story in terms of how you got to be such an amazing business acquirer?
Well, thanks. Good afternoon, Brett, and thanks for having me here today. So my background, I basically grew up in a family business, and as you know, in a small business, you have to be a master of everything. You name it, you have to do it, so to speak. So I got a real affection for running a business and the commitment that it takes to do it with great passion and great discipline, I guess. And then I worked for a large industrial conglomerate here on the east coast of Canada for almost 25 years in an organization that was a very disciplined and very focused and very fast-growing organization that did a lot of acquisitions, and we worked in a lot of different industries, which again was a real a blessing for me to be able to have such a vast background of experience. I left that organization and joined the John Deere world for a couple of years, operating a bunch of John Deere agricultural dealerships, and then had the opportunity to join Service Equipment in Calgary back in 2007, I believe. And we were starting a public company at that time to use public capital to help with the transition, generational transition of different equipment dealerships, owners looking to get out that didn't necessarily have a transition plan. And so we started acquiring those and growing into a very large, sophisticated organization. And as you said earlier, we did a tremendous amount of acquisitions. We grew from roughly 3 John Deere dealerships to 72 different dealerships at the end of it across 3 different countries between Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. So after 10 years, I decided to retire and step away from that, and eventually started my own management consulting group here. And today, again, we continue to help organizations get ready for and execute either acquisitions or divestitures. And a lot of generational transition issues that we're helping organizations with today. So that's kind of the Coles Notes version, Brett.
Robert, do you want to kind of share the Mexit kind of 3-phase structure?
Absolutely. Yeah, the Mexit program that we've evolved, the framework we've created essentially revolves around 3 major steps. The first step is maximizing wealth. The second stage is transacting for wealth. And the third stage is transferring wealth or transitioning wealth. So those 3 stages have their own unique components and characteristics. And that's one of the reasons we're here chatting to you today, John. We want to explore some of those with you.
So John, what I'd like to do is, I'd kind of like to kind of structure our discussion today into kind of two parts. So the one part is the first phase of our process in terms of Mexit, this maximizing value. I think it's really invaluable for business owners to understand what's in the mind of the prospective buyer. You know, what are they looking for? What are the characteristics? What are kind of things that they really should be aware of that you think would really help them in terms of creating more value and positioning themselves to be attractive in terms of an acquisition? Because I think, especially given the glut and the shifting demographic, with boomers becoming a glut, and basically all of the research, the National Economic Council talks about there's a wave of business sales coming from boomers exiting that is going to be overwhelming. So, how does a business owner get their business so that it is attractive when there's a lot to choose from?
Well, that's a great question, Brad. And almost every acquisition we executed over a 10-year period across 3 different countries, all involved pretty much first generation owners looking to sell or transition. And the biggest thing that we looked for from a buyer perspective was, has the owner got the business ready for sale? And I guess the biggest piece to that is, do they have a second tier management team that is capable of running the business once they exit? Historically, a lot of first generation owners start with very much a command and control mindset, which is strategically very important when you're starting a new or small business. But at some point in time, the business gets to the size where command and control doesn't work anymore, and the owner actually becomes exhausted trying to make all the decisions. The key benefit, or I guess a key asset that we look for when we're having the discussions with the owners, have they realized and have they made efforts to transition the decision making and the operations of the business to the second tier management team, which us as an organization buying is critically important, because once the owner steps away, the business needs to continue to operate, as well as we need a good strong base of a leadership team to be able to help get that business ready for the next phase of growth. I guess that's kind of the most important thing that we look for at step one.
In terms of the management team that you're looking for, you're hoping that the owner is creating, how important are the business systems and processes as well as part of that discussion with them when you enter into discussions with them about a transaction?
Yeah, I think that's critically important. When the owner, hopefully over the past number of years before exiting, in their plans to run a better business, have been building better systems and processes to build a lot more robust and consistent controls, I guess would be the proper terminology. With the second tier management team, hopefully those individuals have been a very big part of developing those systems and controls, and can manage and nurture those to run a very successful business. So they are critically important.
What are your thoughts on the growth part? Because one of the things we advise companies in is if they want to maximize value, so A, they're more attractive for you, but also B, you're going to pay a higher price, then we advise that there's got to be a growth scenario, a growth opportunity. Just want to get your feeling on some of those.
Yeah, we're actually working with a couple of companies today to transition to private equity ownership, actually, and that discussion was had a tremendous amount before we actually engaged in private equity, potential buyers, and anybody who's buying a business is not buying it just to maintain it and have it sit and sort of just run along. people are looking to buy businesses because there's a growth opportunity. They want to pay, say a 5 times multiple and be able to grow the business so that someday they could maybe sell it for a 10 times multiple. And when we're talking to potential buyers of these businesses, one of the first things they ask us is, what's the growth story? What has the strategy been? How well has it been executed? How well is it articulated? How well or what part did your second tier management team play in developing that strategy? Are they committed to it? Do they see the future of the business different than it is today? And do they feel capable of executing a business plan to reach that future destination? So strategy is extremely important. And if you, and I'll give you an example. One of the people, the organizations we're talking to today, has been successful in the last couple of years of designing and executing on a strategy that has proven that it is on a growth trajectory. That particular scenario right there will gain the seller probably a 1 to 1.5 times extra multiple premium, because the buyer sees the story very clearly and immediately. And in this particular case, it's about a $4 million premium that the owner is going to get as a result of having that strategy, having the team being a part of it, and showing that it's already in successful execution phase.
When you're evaluating management teams, second tier management teams, John, how important is the culture associated with the success of that organization or potential success of that organization going forward?
Yeah, culture is huge. People tend to underestimate it, but it's the culture that executes the strategy. And if you've got a bad culture, you'll have bad execution. If you had a great culture, you'll have great execution. And culture, really being defined as how a company does things, how they interact with each other, how they treat each other, how they interact with suppliers and customers. It's critically important to not only have a great culture, but be able to articulate what a great culture looks like inside your organization. And in most cases, the second tier management team is the one that initially defines what describes that culture. And then they start living out the attributes of that to make it really become part of the hard wiring of the organization, I guess.
If you're evaluating one company versus the other and you're looking at the cultural fit, is that as important a decision or an important a factor when you're making the final decision to acquire a company? If the culture is good in one versus not so good in another?
It is, and again, it will play into what we're prepared to pay for the business. If there's a great culture that's already high performing on all cylinders, we will pay a bit of a premium to get that business because we know the road to success and growth is much easier. If a company has a culture that's maybe not that great, but we through interviews and discussions, we see that the second tier management team, given the proper guidance and support, can transition to a very positive culture. We will still buy that business because we know we can transform the culture. If it's a toxic culture, we just run for the hills.
A lot of traditional, we talked about boomers and traditional business people. So many of them still have somewhat of a command and control. So what do you look for in the culture? Because you know what it's like when they're trying to sell you their business, they're always trying to put a pretty face on it and make it look. But I think a lot of old school business leaders still think of culture as some kind of nebulous thing. How do you make that more tangible for them? And how do you really see through to the real culture?
Yeah, I guess I would have to say that command and control is not necessarily a bad culture, especially in the early days. And you can have an owner who is still very much in a command and control mode, but still has a very good culture inside the organization where how they treat their people, and how they treat their customers, and how they look after their employees and their customers, they have set a very clear example of what they value. An owner, for an example, who's in command and control can still place a tremendous amount of value on their employees, and those employees in turn, place a tremendous amount of value on each other as a team member, as well as the employees that are working for them. So there can still be a very good people culture inside the business. Beyond that, what we look for as part of a culture is the ability to, how should I say it, deal with the facts of reality of the business, not be hiding things that if something smells, you don't, and it doesn't smell good, you don't say it smells like a rose. You deal with the reality of the business. People accept responsibility for the mistakes that they're making. They also give credit to other people in the business for their success. So those are some of the things that we look for, as part of the culture. Is there a learning and growing component of their culture? When you speak to people, they may not be having learning and growing opportunities provided by the owner, but they're showing their own initiative to learn and grow, whether it be through schooling or, industry associations or whatever. Are they learning and growing? And again, is that part of the wiring of the business? Does that make sense?
I'd like to leverage off a comment you made about if something doesn't smell good, don't try and say it's smelling like a rose. When you're dealing with these smaller businesses that you're looking to acquire, how often do you find that they've got too many personal entanglements on the financial side, and that the normalization of earnings is going to be an important part of getting them out of what I call the family accepted accounting principles versus the generally accepted accounting principles that you would need to observe and look at to make sure you get a good valuation?
Yeah, for sure. A lot of owners live through their business. I guess would be with terminology. They have all kinds of different things, whether it be motorhomes or family members that are, not necessarily heavily involved in the business, but still on the payroll, and, those type of things. So there's lots of things that happen for various different reasons. We understand when we're buying that those things need to be flushed out, and it actually helps the owner's position as far as increasing the EBITDA strength of the business. So be very aware of those, and the least number of those that you have in the business, the better, because we like to see financials that are as close to reality as possible, as well as if there's a lot of living through the business that's affecting the performance of individual departments or area of the business. The employees will have one version of how the business is operating from a financial perspective, when it's actually different, because if you reverse those things, it creates a very different picture of their area of the business.
So that kind of triggered a couple other thoughts in my mind about quantitative and data in terms of your decision making. So the financial numbers, that's fairly straightforward, and you can adjust them and normalize them as you talk about. What are some of the other KPIs that you look for? You talked about culture. Is there numbers that you look for, or KPIs around culture, around other kind of key performance indicators that you think are really critical and you look for when you're looking at acquisition?
Yeah, depending on, I guess there's probably two areas, depending on the type of business that we're looking at. There's obviously best in class KPI numbers for that particular industry. Whether it be fast food restaurants, or whether it be a small manufacturing business, or whether it be an equipment distribution network. Industry associations quite often have industry best practice benchmarks, and we use all of those basically as a scorecard for ourselves to be able to evaluate the business that we're looking at, and we use those KPIs for for two reasons. One is to see where the business is at, and is it performing extremely well, and does that warrant a premium, or where are the gaps in the best practice KPIs? And we look at that as an opportunity when we're evaluating the business, because if it's underperforming by X in 4 or 5 different areas of the business, and we know that we can get it to X plus, we know that we've got a real opportunity to improve the earnings of the business. So that's on the hard side. On the soft side, when it comes to cultural and HR KPIs, a lot of the things we would look at are do they have a measurement for turnover in the business, employee turnover, employee tenure, how long employees have been with the organization. We also look at do they keep score and track the educational and training component of employees. Sometimes there's quite often there's KPIs associated with that. We look at health and safety KPIs. That can give you a very good window into the culture of the organization. So on the soft side, those are some of the things that we would look at.
In terms of the second tier management team, and this might be a question that we can expand a little bit further along when we're talking about transitioning or transferring value. How important is it, and when do you bring the second tier management group into the conversation about the transaction or the transition?
Yeah, I guess there's some owners. Owners will kind of dictate that for you. And the reason I say that is there's two potential scenarios that we usually are faced with. One is that the owner is keeping the transition or the sale of the business extremely confidential, and they will not allow you access to have any conversations with any of their second tier management team, and that's usually negotiated into the LOI or the due diligence side of things, and we respect that, and I guess have to go with that wish of the owner. The second scenario is that the owner is extremely proud of the second tier management team that they've developed. They have been open and very forthcoming with their management team, saying, "Listen, I've got to exit out of this business at some point in time. I'm going to look to transition to a new owner, and you are probably the biggest asset that I have, being the leadership team of this organization." And at that point in time, they will allow you access to that team.
So what proportion from you've done so many of these, what's the proportion between the two? How many are kind of cards close to the chest? How many have you seen it being open? Because to me, the second one seems much more sophisticated and evolved, but personally, I haven't seen a lot of those myself. So I'm curious in your experience.
Yeah, we're probably going back through the ones that I've worked on over the past. I'd probably say 70% of the owners have said no. You can't touch or talk to my management team because I don't want the organization spooked. And another 30% would say yes, come on in. And I would say out of those 70%. There's probably another 10 or 15% that we, after conversations with them, as we get much closer to a deal and an LOI is signed, we negotiate as part of that we get to talk to the management team. And in that particular moment, probably 15% of the cases they do. So it's probably ended up being a 65-45 split at the end of or 65-35, I guess, in that somewhere around there, split, I guess.
Because owners are more reticent to talk about the transfer with their management teams or their employees, and the fact that we've got this baby boomer demographic moving through the economy, how often have you found, or how often when you're just in discussions with these people, how many times have you come across that they're really reticent to have the difficult conversation about selling, or what triggered them to want to actually talk to you about selling the company? Because many of these baby boomer owners, it's their baby, right? That's their life. That's what they've lived for many, many years. So what's the trigger that makes them actually start thinking about actually selling and preparing to sell?
Wow, good question. I would say probably a third of them would be they're just tired. They've run the business, they've built it, it's been their baby, they've been extremely successful. They can manage it almost without even being there, but they're just tired, and they want to move on and enjoy the next phase of their life. Probably another third would be they hit a crisis somewhere, and it's usually a crisis of some type of market happening. I guess there's a market crash, or they're at the bottom of another deep cycle, and they're just they may have balance sheet constraints. There's different things, I guess, from a financial perspective. The other third, and probably the one that you probably see most often, is a health scare. A lot of people have health issues creeping on them, or a health scare, a minor heart attack, stroke, somebody in the family got sick or whatever, and priorities change overnight, and they realize that time is really what you have left, and you want to really value what you do with that time.
Yeah, actually, one thing I know about you is you're a very conscious business leader. And I've seen it times where you're looking at acquisition, you're working with a business owner. I've seen you actually coach and help and advise. What's some of the kind of advice and support that you give when you're kind of doing the early dance with a business owner?
I think the probably the biggest thing where we coach or where we have coached organizations, that leaders that we've bought, usually single owners, has been around the assurance that we as an organization are going to take their company on a phase 2 success journey, I guess, and that we're going to treat their family members with a tremendous amount of respect, and provide them opportunities to grow. That business is their family, and that's probably the biggest part where they really have concerns about letting go. So we provide a lot of coaching there on what it means to go through that thought process. I guess we bring compassion and humility to the discussion with the owner that we're conversing with. We make it a human transaction, I guess. Maybe now that I think about it, it's probably the best way to put it. We make it a human transaction rather than just an outright cold business transaction where I'm going to pay you as little as possible and you're going to try and get as much as possible. And who cares what happens or what collateral damage there is. We really bring a human side to it, and I think that's critically important in helping coach owners through that. I guess being able to cross over into that transition thinking.
Often you've bought businesses all over the world. And when we talk about legacy, legacy is a lot more than just how much money did you make selling your company.
Yeah.
What are some of the other aspects you see in terms of legacy and kind of the mindset, the human factor that's you need to consider in the purchase or the sale?
Yeah, I actually had this conversation the other day with two business owners that we're working with, and the conversation evolved around, what do you as a family want to leave as a legacy for this business? And some of the things that we surfaced and we talked about was they're in a sort of in a smaller mid-sized community, and they have been seen as probably one of the maybe top 30 employers, I guess, in that region. And they want their family name to stand as it is today in very strong order in the community. They have been good to the community. They've employed a lot of people. They've treated people fair. The company has a good name. The family name is a good name. And they want to ensure that this transaction does not hurt that legacy. They also surfaced that they want the company to stay in this community. They don't want it moved somewhere else. They want a commitment from the new owner that there is going to be, the same respect shown for the employee family base as has been in the past. Um, and yeah, that it's just their legacy of a good business run by a good family in a nice community stays intact.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that we've developed Mexit is, when we look around and we've been doing a lot of work in smaller communities and rural areas where, these small, medium-sized businesses, which may not be big fish in big cities, but are critical players, as you describe, in smaller communities. And, this is one of our big concerns is what happens to that community if these people aren't able to transfer or transition successfully, because the data is kind of scary. 2/3 of companies never sell. Small medium enterprises, they shut down, and that terrifies, I think, us in terms of the potential implications for the economy, for the communities, everything like that.
We've spoken with several economic development officers around the province, and they all recognize this as a concern. And they have questions about how could we help them, because they know that if 2/3 of the businesses in their community go under, then they're going to be in deep trouble. The entire community is. So we recognize it's an issue. It's how do you get companies and business owners to recognize that they have to get ready for this and get ready to plan for their transition. That's part of the challenge that we face. And any thoughts you have on that would be insightful.
Yeah, I think very, very good question. And I've dealt with this a lot in the last probably 2 years with different companies that we've been advising to. But I think economic development agencies can work with a lot of different companies, especially small to medium-sized enterprises, and really make sure they understand that you can't wait until a crisis happens to sell your business. You've got to be proactive. You've got to understand what it means to sell your business. You've got to understand what it means to get ready to sell your business. And you've got to be able to tell a great story about your business. And sometimes people aren't very good at doing that. They can tell a great story about their product and they can sell lots of product, but it's a different story when it comes to selling your business to a new owner or finding a new owner. So being able to help owners understand there's a big difference, and understand that that it is a process of preparedness. And you've also got to be able to whether it be an economic development agency bringing the resources in, or a company identifying somebody that they can partner with, but they have to bring in the professionals who understand how to put together a professional, let's say it's prospectus on the business that tells a great story, that tells the whole story, and that they're able to articulate what the opportunity is for the future of that business, based on its strengths, as well as where the possibilities of where the business could go. And that takes work, and it takes thought, and it takes experience. And usually if an owner is waiting till the last minute or hasn't thought through those, it's usually just, I don't know what to do with my business. I'm just going to shut it down and walk away. And there's a tremendous amount of value just left sitting on the table.
You've got probably the most sophisticated model in terms of a disciplined process for that whole evaluation and purchase. So what I'd like to do now is, can you kind of take us through, once the deal is kind of in place, what should they expect when we talk about that transferring value and new ownership, and your secondary leadership team now is really kind of on the hook to deliver that maximum value? Can you kind of describe your process from there to help people understand what's going to happen next?
Yeah, sure. Maybe I could give a little bit of history behind that too, because it kind of sets it up for, I guess, the importance of why you need a disciplined process to be able to transition not only transition value, but also be able to launch a new phase of value creation, I guess is the best way I would put it. And you know, just looking in the rearview mirror in the early days of doing the acquisitions that we did. You know, most often we would buy a business, and the owner would retire or move on, and the second tier management team would say, man, this is great, you know, we've got new owners, they seem like a great company, they're going to take us where we need to go, and they're actually going to allow us to start making decisions. And that's you know, we love that because we want to be a part of that business, and we as the owners say, that's great, so go ahead and start making the decisions. And the thing that pops up right off the bat in almost every case is that the employees do not have the experience or the self-confidence based on trial and error to be able to start making those decisions. And when you ask them to make the decision, they basically back right up and say, oh, geez, I don't want to do that because when I did that in the past, I got my fingers wrapped because the guy in the corner office made all the decisions. All of a sudden, that's a bit of a crisis moment for us as a new owner, because we say, oh, boys, you know, what have we got here? How do we transition this into a new management team, and how do we start to create value? And then all of a sudden, you know, you realize that you've got a lot of work to do in order to set a new mindset, a new culture, and give people the competency and experience that they need to actually make the decisions and run the business better. So in the early days, that created a lot of pain for us and a lot of hard work. But as a result of that pain and experience and hard work, we realized that there actually is a way that we can identify this and have a set of systems and processes prepared right from day one to help those individuals start to be able to grow rather quickly and accept responsibility and start to grow the business. So you know, we developed a program which I guess we talk about our acquisition and integration program, and we sort of have the 100 days before, which is all the things that we're doing technically and operationally as far as getting ready for accepting the acquisition as a new business, and that includes things like due diligence and working with the owners and all those technical things that you need to do. But once you own the business, that's where the real work starts. The buying it is the easy part, I guess, but once you own it, that's where the hard part starts. And what we did is we developed a process where right from day one, we engage the middle management team in a process of really self-discovery. Where are we as an organization? Where are we as leaders in our competencies and capabilities? What are the expectations of the new owners? We expose them to the culture that we are as an organization. We help them articulate what their culture is, and then we work together to try and identify what the gaps are in the culture and how we can bring the two cultures together to be successful together, because a bad culture will very quickly poison and destroy an acquisition. From that point forward, we actually sit down and we start to work as part of this integration process. We actually work with the team to develop a strategy of which we call let's say the business of tomorrow. If the buying organization is this way today and the acquiring organization is this way today, and we want to be someplace greater in the future, we see those two companies coming together as a stronger, healthier organization. And what's the strategy to do that? And we actually build the strategy together very early on in the process, within probably the first 90 days. And we really identify what are the things that are going to help us get there, what are the things that are going to hinder us from having success. And it's a very highly engaging process where the management team of the acquiring company and the company that's being acquired really form a very early partnership. Inside that process, we also have mentors where every individual, every senior management person in the company that we're acquiring is assigned a mentor from from our company, for example, and they are available to that individual 24/7. Our person can get on a plane and hop and go see them if they need it. They're available to speak to employees inside particular departments or their particular part of the business. Anytime, day or night, the communication lines are open. And that's really, such an extremely important part. You can't communicate enough in the middle of an acquisition, and you have to put the communication lines, avenues, streams, connections, whatever you want to call them. Those have to be hardwired into the process right from day one.
When you make an acquisition, what is the risk that the key players that you've identified you want to keep in the organization actually decide that they don't want to be part of the organization? Does it happen often? And B, what can you do to mitigate that? And 3, when do you identify that you've got to create systems or controls or mechanisms to keep those people if you want them to be successful in that or if you want to be successful with that organization? Which people do you want to keep, and how do you incent them to stay?
Yeah, great question. It's critically important because quite often in a lot of acquisitions you will see key people inside the organization leave, and to me that's I'm going to say it's simple. It's not simple, but it's as simple as not having them have a comfort level with you as an organization. We realize that we've seen that happen. We've been burnt by that because of our own lack of communications. But I guess to cut that off at the pass and reduce that risk. The most important thing is that the new owner, whether it be the CEO or the senior management person responsible for the acquisition, is on the ground day one, speaking to each one of those key people as a one-on-one, get to know you, allow them, you get to know them and they get to know you, and really open up that immediate line of communications. One of the things we do as part of the 200 days after, as part of the integration program that helps this, is we do what we call our acquisition roadshow. So what we do is we bring all of the employees together in a group along with their leaders and their managers and the executive team from our organization, the organization that's doing the acquisition. We put on usually about a 2-hour presentation, a PowerPoint presentation with some videos, etc., that really goes into quite a bit about who we are as an organization, where we started, where we're going, the strategy that we're working, why we bought their company, the strengths that we bought their company for, how we treat our people, what our culture is all about, all of those type of things. And we allow the entire organization as soon as possible, usually within the first week, to have a very good understanding of who we are as an organization and get to see the faces of the senior executive team. You need to do that because the anxiety level around the acquisition from the people that are being acquired is no higher than probably the first 7 days after an acquisition. And if you don't get in front of those people and tell your story and tell a great story, they're going to fill in that communications gap with a version of their own story of what it's like. And in most cases, it's not good. It goes negative really fast. And I can talk about sort of the 3 types of personalities that we find when we do an acquisition in a minute. But I guess I'll stop there because that's really how I guess you kind of cut that anxiety off at the pass. Most leaders leave because of the unknown and the anxiety that's raised around the leadership team that is acquiring their organization.
Right. And just to turn that around for a second, if you're advising a company that you're helping to prepare for sale, you'd probably expect this is what we want to see from the people purchasing you, right? These are the things we're looking for. Or if we're advising a company that we're helping in a transition piece, we're going to be saying to them, we need you to make sure that this, and this are covered in part of the process to make sure that we're comfortable with the new management team, or the new ownership team rather, because the management team, like you said, is critical to the success of the company.
Yeah, that's very true. And it goes back to your question or comment earlier about what kind of legacy do you want to leave? It's easy to say to a company that's acquiring you that this is the legacy we want you to leave. But yes, in fact, the owner should be doing their due diligence on that organization that's looking to buy. We just went through this with a company that had three actual bidders on the business. And two of them, you could just tell right off the bat, the culture did not fit and it was going to be a disaster. The company that it was sold to for a fair price, but they had a culture that was really going to facilitate that continuation or transition of the legacy.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of keep going on the people aspect, because I think we all agree that people are everything. You know, the company is the people. But I think back when we first met, you know, and some of the acquisitions, it was almost like the Care Bears, where you were always kind of carrying along everybody as much as you could, to where you're now, where I think it's a much more disciplined process. Can you kind of describe kind of the evolution in how you've progressed on that people aspect in that transition process, and how the disciplined approach you take now is different?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great point too. And the Care Bear description is probably a very accurate one. You know, we would acquire a business and we were the friendly guys, and you know, nothing's going to change and we're just going to let it be. And you're all doing a great job, and so on and so forth. And we didn't see that anxiety or lack of communications as being as bad as it was, and people filling in the story, and a lot of negative energy going on behind the scene. And it was really, you know, you're almost running around trying to put out, anxiety fires after you realize that being I guess very soft, I guess, around your acquisition and integration strategy and how that can backfire on you. What we discovered, and this goes to the comments of the three types of people that we see when we do an acquisition. We realized by observing patterns and doing postmortems, I guess, on successful and unsuccessful acquisitions, we kind of started to realize there was sort of three types of personalities that pop up in an acquisition. One is probably 10% of the people in the organization say this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to us. We've been acquired by a great company. We like these people. Let's just get going and really make a better future here. And then there's another 10% on the far end of that spectrum that they think this is the worst thing that's ever happened to the business. They don't trust anybody, especially the new people that have bought the business. They have a very high level of anxiety. They are not necessarily positive contributors to the business today, and their mission is to sabotage everything that the new companies are trying to do, be it change management, be it anything. They're acquisition destroyers, and then you've got this 80% of the employees in the middle who are really great employees, and they're kind of watching who's going to gain the most ground, the 10% of the people that this is a great idea, or the 10% of the people that say this is a terrible idea. And they're going to sit on the fence, and we call them fence sitters. And we understand why, and there's nothing wrong with that. And all of a sudden they're going to lean whichever way they think the acquisition is going to go, and they're going to protect themselves and stay with the new attitude or go back with the old attitude. And that observation and that scenario was playing out in every single acquisition that we bought, and every single acquisition going forward. I guess how we address that going forward in the future, and I guess this is the evolution of the people side of an acquisition, was right off the bat, we developed some very unique, I guess what we would call experiential learning environments that we created for the senior management team. And that's where the biggest threat is inside that team, where you've got the 10% of the people who are going to destroy your efforts around the acquisition. We basically have a high experiential learning exercise that's combined with the strategy development session I talked about earlier, that really helps us very quickly surface those discussions within the management team, that those three types of personalities are going to play out amongst their employees, and how important it is that the people in the middle transition from fence sitters to being engaged in the acquisition and being part of the future success of the business, and how important it is to identify the 10% that are going to destroy the business, give them an opportunity to transition quickly and demonstrate it. And if not, we need to get them out of the business as quickly as possible, because it is the poison in the dart, so to speak. So that's how we sort of transition from the Care Bear scenario to a very disciplined process around people development.
So it sounds to me like it's critically important that you have a framework to follow once you've made the transaction, it's complete, and you want to integrate that company to the new ownership, whether it's a larger corporation or a private equity firm or just another strategic buyer or financial buyer for that matter, who wants that business to be successful. You better have a good transition process so that you can address these concerns, knowing that breakout that you've just provided for the future success of that business.
You're absolutely right, and it's scalable to a company of 10 and to a company of 10,000. It's very scalable, and the principles play out no matter the size of the organization, because let's face it, it's human behavior that we're dealing with, and that shows up in every acquisition, every integration. So know what the challenges are, know what the opportunities are, have a process to identify it, and surface it, and allow a safe environment to have those conversations where people don't feel threatened discussing those three types of behaviors.
If you were advising a business owner, a small, medium-sized business owner, they've decided in the next 2 to 3 years they want to sell. What are the three biggest nuggets you'd give them in terms of advice? What would you say are kind of 2 or 3 of the most important things they really need to think about as they prepare for this transaction?
I would say probably number one is realize that there is a process to this, and engage with the right people that can help you think through it. It's not difficult. It's not complicated. It's not some dark magic. It's a very disciplined and necessary process. I would say the most important thing is to really sit down with somebody that can help you do an honest evaluation of where the business is today. And I don't mean that from a price perspective. I mean that from how is the business operating? What do the financials look like? What do you have for products to your customers? What are the strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats to the business? Do you have a good second-tier management team? Have you started to work with them to increase their competencies and capabilities in running the business? What's the culture of your business? Can you describe it? What are the values of your business? Can you describe it? All those type of things. Do a real good in-depth analysis of the business, and then sort of do a gap analysis, or a gap review, I guess, and look at what are the gaps between, if you were to maximize value in selling that business to somebody, where you're going to get a premium for that business based on where you're at today and what it looks like when you get that, what your business should look like when you want to demand a premium. What are the gaps between those two? And start to put an action plan together to fill in those gaps, around the things that are missing, or maybe the things that really aren't strong in your business. It's just like selling the product that you are selling today to your customers. You can tell the value story. You need to be able to do that and prove that to a buyer. So think about it now. Don't think about it the day before you want to sell. Take time to get ready. Uh, do the in-depth, honest review of your business, and be prepared to accept some criticism, or maybe some things surface that really don't smell that great, and realize that those are just opportunities to create more value as you learn to tell your story and be able to present your story, that will gain you maximum value, I guess.
That's awesome. I like what you describe as what I would call a saleability assessment, essentially.
Hmm.
What is it? What is it? How saleable is your business now? And then identify what you need to do to fix that, or enhance that, or find the opportunities in that.
I think the mindset of the owner is almost, my product is my business. How do I create a great product that somebody is going to want to sell? So it's not the product of my business, it's the business itself is the product.
Mhm.
And kind of having that mindset of Kate, what's going to make my product the best ever, and the market's going to want it, but really looking at it from that kind of bigger encapsulated perspective.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that we've developed as the SCP group, and we work with our customers, we have a whole list of, I guess it's not a great big list, it's probably about 40 items, I would say, that we call our value drivers list. And it's sort of the very initial litmus test, I guess, that we go through with the owner. And if we go down through these things, where are we on these, and how strong or weak are they, because they do create value in the eyes of the buyer. And it's amazing, how many of those, probably in most cases 80% of them, people don't even put on their radar as being important in getting a maximum price for their business.
In regards to getting, and when you're advising an owner on the preparation of their business, getting it ready for sale, how long do you typically think it takes to get a business prepared for a good, solid, executionable sale?
Yeah, great question. If somebody showed up on your doorstep today offering to buy your business, it would probably take 2 to 3 weeks to put everything together, as far as doing an emergency review, I guess, of oh my God, somebody's here to buy our business, and how can we get the most value for it? That's probably a 2 or 3 week process to respond properly. To really do it right, you probably should be looking at it 2 years in advance, saying, okay, 2 years from now, I want to sell my business. Let's start the process of really putting this to a company that somebody's prepared to pay a premium for. The technical things around the business, finance, some reporting systems, that kind of stuff. Those are the easy fixes. It's the culture, the competency and development of your leadership team, maybe some of the personnel changes you need to make. Those type of things are the ones that can take a bit longer, but those are the ones quite often will give you the most value.
Because that was the answer we were looking for. Because quite frankly, I mean, when I look at a business, and having gone through the process of selling a business, because we were actually on the cusp of selling our business, had done the due diligence and all the rest of it, it actually takes a fair amount of time to get a business ready for sale. I mean, you could do a quick, I'm ready for sale, but at the end of the day, it's not going to create value. You have to take the time to build those characteristics and processes within a business that actually create the value. And that is a time laborious process. Plus, if you're dealing with tax accountants and all the other tax professionals, there may be a restructuring requirement allowed for a business owner, or required for a business owner, to optimize the amount of value they're going to be able to keep in their own pocket. So it does take time. And I think that's a real issue that business owners don't understand, that, it isn't an overnight thing. And would you agree with that?
No, you're exactly right. It's and that's why I say that you should not leave it to the last minute to decide you want to get maximum value for your business. You should prepare. There's a way to prepare. And it's not rocket science. It's just bring in somebody with experience that can help you do that. You don't need to reinvent the wheel because there's people out there that can help you do it very professionally.
It's probably not going to be one person. It's really getting a support team. Because what I've heard from you is if you want to do it right, get help, get advice, get people with expertise who have been there, done that, who can kind of lead you through this. And that's, I find, quite often not one person. It's your lawyer, it's your accountant, it's your tax specialist. It's, you know, there's kind of a support network, I like to think of it as, that is there and available to you. Just getting business owners to feel that sense of urgency and to take that initiative.
Absolutely.
So how do you create that sense of urgency?
I guess the sense of urgency is quite obviously generated by the owner. But if we engage with somebody, right up front, one of the key questions that we ask them is have you thought about how much money you want or need to be able to be very comfortable for the rest of your life? And you should be able to take that number and work that back to what you want to sell your business for. And say, okay, well, let me see now. There's a bunch of, can I get there from selling my business as it is today? And yes, that's fine. If not, how do I close that gap? Can I close that gap? Am I selling it too early? Should I wait a few more years and then sell it? Because maybe I'll be able to get a little bit more, but need less. There's a whole bunch of financial decisions around that. And then, sometimes somebody says to us, I want to sell my business and I need to get 10 million for it. Okay, well, is that 10 million pre-tax or post-tax? Because there's a big difference. So that's when you start to enter the conversations around, tax advice and lawyers and financial planning and all of those type of things that need to be a very important early part of the discussion of selling your business. And I think that's where the sense of urgency starts to come in, is when you surface these questions with a client who's looking to sell their business and they haven't thought through it, or all of a sudden they realize that, oh boys, this is a much bigger question than just somebody writing me a check for my business.
So I want to kind of bring us around to kind of the back end of the discussion, in a sense, again, kind of what are some nuggets on the transfer value aspect, and when you're doing that absorption, what would kind of 2 or 3 kind of key most important things you'd advise a business owner to expect and to kind of prepare themselves or prepare their teams in terms of making that transition successful?
From a seller's perspective, transitioning value is probably not a priority question unless it's going to a family member. Transitioning value is, I don't see it really as a priority question. What they're looking to do is maximize value from the sale. The transition of value is really the responsibility of the acquirer, in my opinion. So, from a seller's perspective, in the process of maximizing value, and I'm just thinking about this and it kind of popped into my mind. So, from the perspective of a seller trying to maximize value, one of the things that they can do is show the new owner that the value that the business is creating today is sustainable and will continue under new ownership if means if there's a culture that's in alignment, if there's a strategy that's in alignment, those type of things. So sort of hidden inside that maximizing value is here's how value is going to transition, I guess, would probably be the answer. And the nuggets within that, like we've talked before, is the probably the competency and capabilities of the second tier management team who will run the business. that is worth a tremendous amount of money. And I can't emphasize that enough.
Mhm.
It's worth a tremendous amount of money to a buyer. So that's probably one of the biggest nuggets. Being able to articulate the culture and the values of your organization, and show real examples of how the positive, high performing, highly engaged culture of your organization is actually demonstrated. You can prove that it's actually happening. Is a big key nugget.
Quite often, one of the things I see in transactions is there may be some golden handcuffs. There may be a period during which the original owners may still be required to contribute or be involved. You know, the handover of relationships quite often with key suppliers, with key clients, some of those things. So, you know, sometimes, and I'm curious from your experience, sometimes there's an expectation of some level of continued involvement for whatever period, but not just for the owners though, but also for some of the key second tier leadership, as you talked about. What are some of the experiences and expectations around that?
Yeah, sure. Well, a couple of recent ones that we were involved with. One was the owner wanted an X times multiple for the business, and the buyer was only prepared to pay an X minus. So there was a bit of a gap there. And what was negotiated was that the difference in the multiple, and it was a one-time multiple difference, was the acquirer was prepared to pay that on an earnout. So basically, what that did is the owner of the business and the CEO of the business agreed to stay for another 2 years. And if certain benchmarks or financial performance are hit over the next the next 24 months, they would get that one-time multiple paid out as a bonus. So that's one way that it was handled. Another one was handled that they definitely wanted the owner to stay around because of those things like relationships, and whether it be on suppliers, with employees, with customers, with the expertise around the product, all that type of thing. And an agreement was put in place. The owner didn't want to stay working in the business full time, but they basically signed what we called an ambassador agreement, where they were given a retainer for a 2-year period, and they agreed as part of the sale of the business and the contract around the sale of the business that they would be available for a 2-year period. They would be paid X number of dollars to answer the phone, as well as meet with clients when necessary, and attend a few meetings and that type of thing. So it was basically, we called it an ambassador agreement. So that's what we were able to negotiate on that one. So that's 2 real examples that have happened recently.
And if you wanted to avoid those kinds of agreements, essentially you would have to have the system or the business being able to function very effectively on its own without your presence, correct?
That's true. And again, that's one of the reasons why somebody's prepared to pay a premium on the business, when an owner can say, listen, I'm only here 2 months of the year running my business. The other 10 months I'm in Mexico, or Kamazal, or wherever, at my home down there, and I just check in once a week with my management team. We know at that point that there's a really, really strong team running this business, and they have all the relationships. It's not the owner anymore, and that's worth something.
That's actually a really good comment. It's your comment about they own the relationships rather than the owner, and once you get to that stage, that adds significant value to a business.
Yeah, I can give you a real life example. I looked at buying a business a number of years ago, and it was a really good sized business, extremely profitable, with margins that were just would blow your mind. It was so well. But there was one person in the business who owned all the relationships, handled all the sales, with the suppliers, everything. It wasn't a huge business, but it was extremely profitable. And what I because sort of on the upper end of a small scale business. I'm just trying to remember. It was probably in the $30 million range, I think, $30 to $40 million in revenue. And we at the end of it decided to walk away from that business because the owner wanted to step away and retire. And we knew that the business was him, and that's with him. Without him there, we basically were in a very high risk position of all of those customers just going wherever, and the business would blow up on us in very short order. So yeah, we decided not to buy that business, and I don't think it ever did get sold.
In my experience with the organizational evolution change work that I've done, that's kind of one of my signs of success, because I find quite often when I've started working with companies, it's because they've stagnated, they've hit a wall, they've hit a ceiling, and they're stuck. And the only way we get them unstuck is it's usually the owner or the founder who is that ceiling. They're the limiting factor in their own businesses. And when we get them to realize it, and the ones who are mature enough and motivated enough to be open to change, when they do, what we find is it over a period of time, as they empower and build and develop their second leadership team, as you describe them, that we've really hit success when they get to the point where the team has taken over all those responsibilities. And I find there's usually a period where the CEO says to me, I don't know what my job is anymore.
Yeah, and that's a good position for him
because
to be
everything's
in.
being taken care of. And I know when we hit that stage, then we've really kind of accomplished the big goal, because at that point, the team is actually doing things better than the owner was. And I can think of at least 2 or 3 clients where we've been able to hit that. And, the companies have grown by an order of magnitude, at tenfold, from a 5 million to a 50 million, from a 10 million to 100 million. But it's been because they've actually empowered that team, taken that step. And that's, to me, like you said, that's when you get the big multiples, because, that's something that you buy, and you're just going to make it better.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We often say that the CEO's number one job is to make themselves obsolete, and that is so true.
So, John, there's something else that has come to mind. I think it's on your value builders checklist, is creating future value, future potential value for the company. And things like new IP, new innovation, kind of really taking out that entrepreneurial mindset and looking forward for what's going to be some of the future demands in the business. So quite often it might be new markets, new technologies, things that you haven't done yet, but have the capacity to do. I'm curious in terms of how that fits with your kind of value perspective.
Yeah, well, it's very important. We're actually working with a client right now to articulate that, and because what we're trying to do is we're trying to help a buyer see the future, and why they should pay a premium for the business, because we have all of this stuff in the pipeline, and we have a proven track record of being able to develop and execute products. In this particular case, it's about expanding into new markets. We basically have been able to identify a 5-year plan of several market verticals where our product will be highly attractive, that we haven't stepped into yet, and what our strategy is to get there. So that is, almost every private equity firm that I've ever spoken to, and I've probably met with 20 of them in the last probably 6 months to talk about different things, but is what's the future value creation story is probably a number one question. Is it consolidation? Is it new products? Is it new markets? Is it expanding markets? Is it new verticals? Whatever. So yeah, that's a real value creation discussion.
When you're looking at companies out there, how often do you see that there are opportunities downstream, if you will? Like, for instance, infrastructure is a big issue. All across the country, we have infrastructure that is old, failing. Tying into companies that can tap into maintenance, repair, inspection, all the and revigorating infrastructure. What have you seen in terms of that? In terms of companies that you look at, do you often see them say, well, you know what, let's go back to things that other people aren't looking at anymore?
I guess depending on the size of the business, there should be an expectation from the buyer that you have a well thought out strategy, and as part of that strategic review, to strategic review to create more value when you sell your business, you should have a very wide lens of where your organization can create new products, new services, new opportunities. I think that's kind of what you're referring to, and then a good strategy should capture that.
Find that is the case, though, when you're looking at these companies? Do they actually cast a wide enough net, or they typically are just still fishing in their small little lake?
Well, yeah, I'd say, there's quite a number of them that are, this is what we do. We've always done it this way. We have a great product. Somebody, people will want our product forever. But as we know, that's not true. So, yeah, there's quite a few that don't look beyond where they're at today. So
it's a good consideration when you're talking about the strategic planning, is to cast that net wider and look at possibilities then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what I'd like to do is kind of start to bring us to a close. So John, I'd like to kind of give you an open floor in a sense, because the people that we're targeting to share the video and share these insights with really are kind of small, medium-sized business owners looking to just kind of get ideas on things they need to consider. So I guess I'd like to give you kind of an open mic, and just what are some of the things that small, medium business owner, what are some of the things you'd like to leave them with in terms of key things to think about that would help them?
I'd probably say the biggest thing is to start talking about it as soon as you can, and whether it be with an outside expert, or maybe you have a breakfast group of like-minded business owners. Really start talking about the ideas of selling. There's a lot of experience and a lot of expertise out there, and there's a lot of really great ideas that people have. So don't think that this is a solo, private, problem or opportunity you're trying to realize. Be prepared to, if you're really going to maximize value for your business, be prepared to have somebody come in who will be open and honest with you. Allow them to be open and honest with you. Have some thick skin, because some of the things that they identify may not be that great, or they may identify things that you think are not really worth that much value that really are worth a lot of value. So have somebody who has experience in this look at it through their lens, and don't afraid to ask for help, or ask for other people's experience and opinions. I guess just be open and just be very open about it with people that you trust, and because it really can help you through a whole lot of things, not only on the technical side as far as maximizing value, but even on the personal side. Because if this thing has been your baby your whole life, it's like you're selling one of your children, and it's not going to be easy. And even after you have given the keys to a new business owner, there's going to be a period of remorse, and even though you've got a big check, there's going to be a period of remorse and discomfort, and a little bit of depression has happened quite often with people that have sold their business. So have some good coach and mentors helping you think through that, I guess, would probably be the biggest nuggets and the biggest advice I could give.